Hello, everybody, whoever is watching. I hope this is working. Um, we are live here with a Q&A. We're going to start in a couple minutes. I'm going to let a couple people join in. And as you join in, just give me a little wave or a hello. Let me know where you're coming from today. And we'll get started in a little while. I'm excited to be answering your questions today. For those of you who don't know me, I am Alexi Kenney. I'm a violinist and am the scheduled soloist in September for the Santa Fe Symphony. I've been there several times now, and it's really one of my absolute favorite places to be, one of my absolute favorite orchestras to be with, favorite groups of people, and yeah, I really adore being there in every way. Hi, we have our first comment. Yeah, so if you're just joining me, please comment with just a little hello. If you're so inclined, if you have any questions for me, we'll get started in a minute or so, answering your questions. And yeah, looking forward to doing this. So let me know where you're coming from. Yeah, hope you're all staying well right now. This is a crazy time for all of us, but yeah, I'm coming to you actually from California. I moved out of my apartment in New York about a week ago, which was its own particular messy drama, as you can imagine. And I relocated out here sort of indefinitely. So yeah, it's been great. I love. I'm actually from the San Francisco Bay Area, so this is where I'm coming to you from, and it's been just delightful to have some outdoor space, some private time to just be with myself and digest the move that I just made. So yeah, all right. So I think we're going to get started here. I have a couple questions that folks had submitted via email here. And if you're just joining me, my name is Alexi Kenney. I am going to be the soloist with the Santa Fe Symphony in September, playing Dvorak's Violin Concerto. And I would welcome any of your comments. Please let me know where you're coming from today. As I said before, just give me a little hi. Let me know you're listening. And yeah, any questions about anything, about art, life, whatever, just send them my way. So here we have a couple questions. One of them is, what is it like to work with so many orchestras throughout the season? Does your bond with musicians differ greatly with each orchestra? I think that's such a wonderful question. And, it's true. It's just every time you go to a different orchestra and every time you are with a different group of people, the dynamic is completely different. I think even if you switch out one player from an orchestra, the dynamic is somehow going to be different. So imagine that on a scale of 80 to 100 people on one stage. Each personality is different. Everyone comes at it with such a dynamic, their own dynamic personality, their own musical personality. But what I find so beautiful is that, of course, it's also a workplace, and it's also, it's so many things at one time. An orchestra is both a workplace and artistic meeting place, and a place that is hopefully safe for everyone to express themselves in. And that, I think, though that maintains throughout every orchestra. So every orchestra has that as a ground base. But what really differs is, of course, the personalities. And I think that's such a fun thing for me to do, is go to orchestras and experience how the dynamic, the vibe of the orchestra is so different from one another. And as far as the Santa Fe Symphony goes, I think they have one of the most friendly and just beautiful rapports between the members. I think it's partially because they're self-directed, and each member of the orchestra, or many members, have their own jobs to do at the symphony. So that gives a real sense of entitlement to what they do. And I always really respected and appreciated that when I went, or when I go to play with the Santa Fe Symphony. And of course, they're just an incredibly warm group of people. And, I've loved getting to know several of them very closely. And I still keep in contact with many friends in Santa Fe. So yeah, to answer that question, what is it like to work with all the orchestras? I think it's just fascinating. It's really such a pleasure, such a privilege that, of course, for me, it's like in a busy streak, I can be traveling and being somewhere different every week, which you could imagine has its drawbacks, has its sort of stresses. But really, once you get to any given group of people, I always find it's an incredibly, like, the musician circle is just such a generous, lovely community, and that's always what I love about traveling. And of course, musically speaking, every orchestra has its own sound, its own vibe, depending on who the conductor is. If it's their music director or a guest conductor, you're always going to get a different experience. And I find that just, especially returning to the same orchestra under a different music director or a guest conductor, it's such a beautiful thing to see how an orchestra is as an entity. So another question is, that was a meaty one. So I'm gonna wait to answer that for a couple seconds. Okay, what instrument do you play? I play on a Peter Greiner. This is a modern maker. He's German, but he lives in London. Actually, I think he just moved to Tel Aviv, actually. I don't know why. But he is an absolutely fantastic contemporary maker. He's about 55 years old. And he didn't make this instrument for me, but I sort of happened upon it, and it really spoke to me. And I took it home, and within 2 weeks, it had completely blossomed and shaped into this really, like, it sort of fit my personality as the 2 weeks went on. And that continued even for 2 months, turned into 2 years after I bought the instrument. And now we're going on, let's see, 7 years that I've had this violin. And I honestly am so happy to have it and so thankful to have found it, because actually, as you may be aware, there's just, the market for violins is astronomically priced. So you can pretty much pay, like, pick a number, you can pay that amount for a violin, up to like $45 million. So I feel very thankful that obviously I couldn't afford that anyway, but that I didn't have to really, really go searching and stressing out about finding donors to purchase an instrument for me, as a lot of my friends have done. Of course, that's a wonderful process, and the old instruments have their own personalities and their own strengths and weaknesses, just as mine does. And so it's just a matter of taste. And for me, it's a matter of, I just don't want to go through that process of stressing out over how to afford or how to ask somebody for uh, the donation of a multi-million dollar instrument. One thing that you guys may not be aware of that I find really interesting, and I think it's so fun to talk about with people who are not string instrument players, is the aspect of how important the bow is to the instrument. So everyone is always asking me, what is your violin? What's your violin? And what I sort of wish they'd ask me is, what is your bow? Because the bow almost has, I would say, it's equal or greater importance to the violin. And the reason behind that is maybe it's personal for me. And I can't tell you how the magic of a bow is created. All I know is that bow makers possess some sort of wizardry that I'm just unaware of, and mere mortals are unaware of. And the bow is really fascinating because it's made of Pernambuco wood primarily. All bows that we play on right now are made of Pernambuco, and that type of wood is only grown in a really specific area of Brazil. And other things on the bow, the tip is made of ivory. The frog, what we call where the hand goes, is made of ebony. It's also sometimes wrapped with whalebone. So it's like it's like an incredibly global thing. And I find that really beautiful. And my bow was also made in 1850. So it's a historical artifact, and it's fun to think about like where these bows have been and who's played on, who may have played on, who may have heard the bow that you're playing on. So that's always lovely. Ooh, okay. Tell us about your most embarrassing, funny, unexpected performance experience. Hi, Ryan. Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So actually, I will preface this with talking about the Dvorak Concerto, which I will be playing with the Santa Fe Symphony. So I hope you don't judge me too hard for this one. But the Dvorak Concerto is like maybe the most notorious beginning of any violin concerto there is. And basically you have like the violin enters almost immediately, and you have this really, really, really high note, actually two really high notes that you have to hit. And there's just no going around them. Like if you hit them, you hit them. And if you don't, too bad. Like you just can't fudge it in any way. And so, on top of that, like the Dvorak Concerto has 1,000 runs and passages that are just nearly impossible. So it's a very stressful piece in a way. Like I love it very much. I'll talk about it in a second. But the first time that I played this in public, my first performance of this piece, I was so nervous for both of those top notes. And got on stage, and like I'm not somebody who gets that nervous often. So when it does happen, I don't really know what to do with those nerves. But anyway, so the nerves happened, and I was getting ready for that first entrance, and I just completely botched both of the top notes. And there was just there's no way to go around it. Like you just got to own it. So I think one of the notes was like half note flat, and one of them was half note sharp, or something like pretty embarrassing, and you just got to go with it. Unfortunately, that was at the very beginning of the piece. Maybe fortunately, because then it all kind of got better after that, I think. There's no recording to prove that, thankfully. But anyway, lesson learned. I will practice that harder for my concerts with the Santa Fe Symphony in September. Oh, it's so nice to see. Oh, hi, Nicole. Hi, Dana. It's great to see you guys. I'm excited to see you both in September. Oh, okay. Here's a question. How do you feel about this particular Dvorak piece, the concerto, versus the romance that I played with the Santa Fe Symphony last time I was there, which is, I think, nearly 3 years ago? Is that right? Um, well, fun fact is actually that the Dvorak romance that I played whenever I was last in Santa Fe, I can't quite remember. That piece was originally supposed to be the slow movement of, or it was conceived of as the slow movement of the Dvorak violin concerto. And for whatever reason, Dvorak rewrote the concerto and replaced that movement with the movement that we all currently know as the slow movement, the second movement. And I think the reasons are unknown for that, but thankfully he kept the original slow movement as a standalone piece, which is Opus 11. And that's what I played. It's in F minor. It's what I played with the Santa Fe Symphony last time. I really think it stands alone so beautifully. I wish more people played that piece, and that's partially why I was so eager to program it last time. And the violin concerto is, in comparison, actually, in comparison, the two slow movements, the violin concerto and um, the romance has this like incredibly dark soul. It's really, really, I don't know, heartfelt, tender, but incredibly vulnerable and sorrowful. Whereas the violin concerto is more like at peace. It's in F major. It's soaring. It's really just like such a comforting piece. And I think my thought as to why he would have replaced those movements is because the rest of the violin concerto, so the violin concerto is in three movements. There's two movements. They're basically of the same length. The two outer movements are both in A minor. They're both, or actually the last movement's in A major, has a stormy section in the middle, but they're both very, very like full throttle pieces. They have so much vitality in them and so much, first movement has a lot of sorrow, a lot of anxiety. The last movement is just like pure, sprightliness. It's so dance-like. And then the middle section is sort of a country, this like, I don't know, minor sort of rough and tumble country dance. And so I feel like he wanted to balance that with a second movement that is more peaceful and sort of more, I don't know, happy is a very simplistic word, but yes, I mean, as compared to the romance, which is very minor, like inward, introverted, I think the current slow movement that he chose to put into the piece is maybe a better choice. So, all right. Somebody has said, knowing that you love to bake, what have you been baking since you arrived in California? The answer is absolutely nothing. I People who know me, basically, like the first thing you should know about me, other than I play the violin, is that I love food deeply. I really love this time of year in California because we can get all these like fresh fruits. Apricots are just coming to season, white peaches, cherries, yellow peaches and nectarines are just on their way. So we have just such an incredible abundance of fruit, and I'm like a huge fruit eater. So I basically haven't been baking. I've just been eating a lot of raw fruit. Of course, I wash it very carefully first. Um, yeah, and another thing that I've been doing is I just made myself a matcha latte, which is great. I have been, oh, somebody asked, like, what have you been doing in quarantine? I have been doing a lot of visual art, and that comes in a few different forms. I've been sketching, finally have some time to sketch, and my mom just delivered some watercolor paint, so I'm excited to explore that a little bit. I've also been practicing the art of Japanese joinery of broken ceramics. It's called kintsugi. It's where you basically take a cracked or broken piece of pottery and join it together with gold dust or gold leaf. And so in the end, you get these veins of gold that run throughout the cracks, thereby highlighting the imperfection, or as the Japanese call it, it's the wabi-sabi. So you highlight imperfection, and instead of trying to hide it, or instead of throwing away the ceramics. And I had this really beautiful bowl that my mom gave to me, and in transit, it had broken. So I had decided to just order some basic supplies for kintsugi on Amazon, and the results are really beautiful. So I've been doing that. I've been not practicing, not playing the violin actually a whole lot, but if you go on my YouTube channel and follow me on various social outlets, you'll know that I've been busy sort of on and off making these solo violin arrangements of basically whatever comes to mind. So it's been quite random. I've done some Joni Mitchell, some Ariana Grande, and a lot of Bach. Schumann is in process. So we have like a lot of opportunity, I think, during this time to, provided we're healthy, provided we are doing all right mentally, which I know a lot of people are not. And, I feel very grateful that for whatever reason, I have escaped illness and am continuing to be healthy. So I'm very thankful for that. But I also feel very, very, very grateful to have this period of time sort of in private to rediscover my love for various things, musical and otherwise. And I think for me, it's also been pretty healing. I mean, if I of course love what I do in normal times, and I love traveling to an extent, and I love doing a lot of different things, playing in a lot of places, playing with a lot of people. Of course, I miss the most being with people and playing with people. But actually, there was maybe something that happened for me that, I mean, it wasn't a single event. It's just this aggregation of like just being on the road so much the past year or two that somehow I'd maybe just lost this sense of feeling grateful for really every opportunity and being in the moment. And I think that's something that this time has been a gift for. So I will look forward to really coming back with a renewed sense of love for the violin and love for music and love for people. And I'm grateful for this time in that way. Can actually I have the bowl. It's right here. Somebody has just said, can you show us the bowl that you just kintsugi'd? Yeah, so this is it. You can see sort of, it's just like that peace sign looking place. It was a single impact. So that's the outside. Yep, that's it. It's a really fun project. It just requires you to, I mean, actually, traditionally, the way that you do this is like you use a very of course, the Japanese traditions are so they're so traditional there that they will use a type of glue that they've used for centuries and centuries, and it takes about 3 months to dry. And so, as a non-purist, I just used epoxy. So that's kind of the cheating version, but it takes about 2 hours to set. Um, and then, yeah, you just take a little gold mica dust and an X-Acto knife and kind of do some artwork to make the lines look original or like a little bit more legit. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully I don't break it again. Let's see. Thank you guys. Okay. Let's see. Oh, a question from a caller. Have you performed at the St. Francis Auditorium with the symphony's chamber players? Actually, I have not, and I would love to do that. I'm always loving. I love playing chamber music. That's one of my greatest joys in life, and yeah, it's always great to have a diverse set of opportunities as a musician, and I really cherish having that in my life. So I do quite a bit of chamber music, mostly during the summers, but yeah, it depends. Another question, are there any new works you're hoping to play with orchestra at some point? Yes, I have actually a wish list that I'm always updating. I'm kind of obsessed with like researching music, new music, old music, unknown music, things that I don't know. So yeah, I have a long list of things. There's, new and old. I've actually never played the Beethoven Concerto, which I've always been scared of. It's like my favorite piece. And I think I'm doing it. I'm scheduled to do it, fingers crossed, next season at some point. I finally talked somebody into it. But yeah, so that's a piece that's on my wish list that's pretty standard. I love a lot of contemporary pieces. I just heard this violin concerto by Daniel Bjarnason, who is an Icelandic composer, really incredible piece. Thomas Addis wrote a violin concerto that is pretty near impossible, but really wonderful. Sofia Gubaidulina has now written 3 violin concertos. There's a beautiful concerto by Sarajevo. Yeah, and take your pick. Like Ligeti Concerto is one of my absolute favorite pieces in the world. And if you don't know Georgi Ligeti's pieces, I would highly recommend taking a listen. It might not be your cup of tea, but kind of indisputably one of the great masters of the 20th century. And I think still kind of underrated and underperformed. Let's see. Oh, hi, Guillermo. Nice to see you. There's a question from Guillermo. I just started practicing the violin after a month and a half. Feels so fresh and wonderful to come back. Do you ever take long breaks like this, and what is it like? I love this comment. I have taken large breaks like that. Actually, this time I was sort of intending to take a break, but somehow like my creative juices started flowing, and then pretty soon I ended up practicing. Like in the past few weeks, I was practicing more than I practice normally. So I don't know, go figure. But in the past, yeah, I've taken substantial breaks, and I always find when I return that it's such an interesting thing. Whatever happens during the break, pieces usually come out conceptually or just they make more sense when you come out of a long break, especially if I've been playing kind of nonstop before then. And I always I don't know why that is, but that's kind of a great thing. I'm not sure that I would take a break just to have that feeling, because I'm not sure that it's completely, um, you know, that'll happen every time. But one other thing that's very interesting is that I find my muscles have sort of relaxed or balanced out in a way that my left hand feels like it can do anything. So that's the hand that is on the fingerboard producing the notes. That left hand is fine. It knows where to go. It's the right hand that just feels like lead. It feels like finger dexterity, just arm doesn't know what weight to be at. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And I kind of love that feeling, because also that gives us an opportunity to, provided we have the time to get, have a slow get back into it, that we're able to kind of go back to basics. And sometimes when you're playing hours a day and traveling and have to prepare this piece and that piece, you forget about your basic bow technique and your etudes and your scales and your Bach and whatever else it is that's sort of foundational. So yeah, I think that's a fun thing, provided you have the time. Do you speak Japanese? I do not speak Japanese. I wish that I spoke any second language, and that was sort of a quarantine goal that has not yet materialized. Okay, one other question. How long did it take you to put together the Inescu video? First and foremost, actually, this kind of goes back to another question that I was asked before that I found a little daunting, so I tucked it away for later, and now it's later, so I've got to tackle it. Somebody has asked, if you were able to plan the perfect 2-hour program at the perfect venue for a full orchestral performance with you as soloist, what would it be? Keeping it under 2 hours. That's a very good, that's a good addendum. Well, so here's how that relates to Inescu Octet, because I think Inescu Octet is one of my favorite pieces on the planet. If you don't know George Enescu, he was this tour de force violinist, pedagogue, conductor, and composer. And it seems that he did all 4 of those things incredibly well. To the best of our knowledge, I mean, he was Yehudi Menuhin's teacher, among many others. And his compositions, this octet, I would highly recommend you go listen to it. It's got everything in it. It sounds like a whole symphony, and yet it's only 8 people playing. Really one of my favorite pieces on the planet, and it's so epic. It's in 40 minutes, basically a single movement, essentially. And the themes are all sort of interconnected. So also from a technical or from a analytical perspective, it's just a fascinating piece. And so that would have to be on it. There's actually a little side note in the beginning of the score that says that you can perform it as a chamber orchestra, so as a string orchestra. And so I would definitely put that on any program that I had to program. Yeah, what else on a good 2-hour program for solo violin and orchestra? I mean, there's just too many great pieces. I'd have to say maybe a Concerto Grosso by Corelli. Either that or one of the great unknown Vivaldi violin concertos, counter to, or actually maybe a lot of people do know this, that he wrote. Vivaldi was one of the most prolific composers. He wrote like hundreds of violin concertos and hundreds of other concertos for different instrumentations. And mostly what we know is, of course, the Four Seasons and a handful of other concerti, but so many of them are just not played So I would love to bring some of those to light and to life. I'm also a huge fan of anything in the Baroque and actually before. That's one of my greatest passions, is the music of um, the Baroque and Renaissance periods. And probably if I could only play one style of music or one genre of music from one period, I would choose that period. I don't know why. Just it really always resonates with me. Um, oh my God! Wow, that's amazing. So Guillermo says, my father and uncle played the Enescu Octet with him in Paris. You have a program of the concert he gave. That's really really amazing. Um, that's pretty cool. Uh, yeah, that's really not many. That's not many degrees of separation at all. Um, yeah, so Enescu, back to Enescu. I think on top of the octet he wrote, actually, most people know, if they know an Enescu violin sonata, they know number three. Number three is like the most, maybe the most fantastic one. But he wrote three of them. He also wrote a sizable piece for violin and piano called Impressions of or Memories of Childhood, and several orchestral pieces, viola, concertante, yada yada, something or other. He wrote quite a few things, but maybe even a symphony or two. Yeah, there's a lot to discover, and of course, one of the greatest things is that we still have some of his recordings. So he even recorded the Bach sonatas and partitas, which is a fascinating recording. And yeah, favorite etude book. Oh dear. Well, now that I said I played etudes, I don't know. I mean, I kind of I always go back to Bach. Not that that's an etude book per se, but I think that you can pluck out really anything from Bach and make an etude out of it. And that's honestly what I do every day that I play the violin, is whip out some Bach at the beginning and go slowly, focus on different things. So yeah, it's been a constant. Of course, other things have rotated around, like Shevchik and Gavinier and various other things, but Bach is absolutely a constant for me. All right, let me see if there's any more questions. How is your family doing? They're doing really well. I'm still in my quarantine, so I'm not seeing them yet, but I've seen them from afar. We're keeping our distance, so that's been really, really nice. All right, one last question, unless I get another one in the chat here. Is there an instrument you don't play but wish you could? Cello, perhaps? I wonder who's asking this. Maybe a cellist. Well, as a matter of fact, I don't play, very ashamedly, I don't play any other instrument besides the violin, and I really wouldn't say I play viola. I can barely read the clef. But perhaps my favorite instrument is the piano, and I really wish that I could play the piano. Like every day I wake up and I listen to so much piano music on a daily basis. I'm obsessed with everything Bach wrote for piano or for keyboard, that for that matter. And I have been really enjoying Bach's partitas for piano. Goldberg variations, of course, stay in my life always, every day. Think about them. A lot of the French suites, English suites, and of course, preludes and fugues are just some of the most amazing pieces ever written. And Beethoven piano sonatas, the Brahms piano sonatas, the intermezzi. Oh, there's so much great stuff written for piano. The Ligeti Etudes. There's, yeah, just like incredible worlds. I'm always kind of jealous. I think that's why I'm making all these solo violin arrangements, is because I'm jealous of the piano for being able to play complete works by themselves. And of course, being sequestered by myself now, it feels very appropriate to, long for something that is polyphonic and multi voices. And that's just my reality, that violin can never quite match the piano in the amount of just symphonic scope that it has. So, oh, okay, all right. There's a slew of new questions. Okay, I bet you can sing. Nicole, I cannot sing. I really can't. I'm sorry. I wish I could. I wish I could be a singer too. Who are the artists you admire most, both living or not? There's a lot. There are, of course, I mean, sort of the cop-out answer, but the answer that I really honestly believe in to that question is like everyone. I love seeing diverse voices, and I love listening to people who have something individual to say, and something very honest to say. So anyone who preaches honesty through an instrument or through their voice, or really through any art, that's something that I'm very attracted to, and I think always gets to me. Yeah, there's, I mean, a lot of personal influences, I would say, for, I've known Mitsuko Uchida through the Marlborough Festival, and she's, one of the greatest pianists in the world. She's one of my absolute idols, I would say. Pam Frank, who is a violinist and another mentor of mine. My great teachers, Don Weilerstein, Miriam Fried. I'm always thinking about, perhaps I'm thinking more about what they taught me in school now that I'm out of school for some years now. Even to this day, I'm kind of always thinking about how it is that we as musicians can play one instrument and come at it from millions of angles, and everyone's personalities and everyone's experiences shade the way that they teach and the way that they play and the way that they impart their knowledge, whether that's in a classroom setting or in a private studio or on stage. That's another aspect of connection and giving that we're so lucky to have as musicians. So yeah, that's a few. What's your favorite current violin concerto? Hi, David. Well, I don't know. Favorite. I mentioned a few earlier. I would say one that I'm itching to play is the Adès Concerto. I think part of the reason for that is because it seems like an almost insurmountable challenge. Like, you look at the score and it's like, it looks crazy. So, yeah, currently that's one thing that's on my bucket list. But there's so many great pieces being written today, and actually it's a real artistic goal of mine to support and to commission composers through my career, and I will always be so curious and so fascinated by, as I said, like individual voices. I love I love hearing new voices and compelling artistic statements from new composers. And I think that's just something that, as an artist, as a musician, we're in a very, very unique place to be able to bring new art into the world like that, and work with somebody else who will inspire you to, not only play their music, but maybe look at art in a particular way that you haven't thought about. So with that, I think I'm going to sign off. It's already been 45 minutes. And you've probably had enough of me. So I think I've answered all your questions. And if I haven't, follow me on Instagram and ask me there, and I will do my best. I don't always look, but I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. So if you think of anything, just let me know. And I've been told that this is a new piece of information that actually my good friend Zlatomir Fung, who is one of the most fabulous cellists, not only of his generation, but I think of any generation living right now, he will be doing what I'm doing right now next week at the same time, same place, next Friday. It's Friday, right? Yeah. At 4 p.m. And again, Zlatomir Fung, just a wonderful artist, incredible human being. Yeah, I think you'll have an amazing time with him. So, and I think he's joining you also at Santa Fe Symphony next season, if I'm not mistaken. So that will be wonderful. I will really look forward to seeing all of you in September. I hope that wherever you're joining me from, that you will, once it's safe to do so, go out and support your local orchestra, support your local artists, just really be as generous as you can with your time and your financial donations to keep art alive. And I am optimistic that we'll get through this and that we'll be stronger at the end because of it. So take care, everybody. And until next time, stay safe. Bye.